So here in the marina, John has set up a little sailing school, and he owns quite a few boats here, and every Sunday he's trying to take out the dinghies for little races and just for a bit of fun out on the river there. And we've kept ducking out of this, and so we thought, well, today let's do it. John's going to come with us. This is going to be quite interesting for us and good fun, but we thought we'd take it one step further, and we're going to attempt to answer some of the questions and comments that were put up on last week's episode about preparing for sailing through storms. So not sure if this is going to work or not. I think we could be running around pulling lines, but we're going to attempt to do this as we go out for sail on the Deben lugger.
This is the Deben lugger, or Deben lugger from East Anglia. It's a replica of the original sort of style fishing boats that ran out on the Deben at the turn of the century. This is a fiberglass version with a carbon mast produced by East Anglia Yachts, I think, and we bought it at the Southampton Boat Show about 3 or 4 years ago. Fell in love with it and brought it out to Thailand, and great boat for sailing in the river here, going fishing. Take 4 or 5 people in there, little outboard motor, trailer. Great, good boat.
So in episode 120 we asked the question, what happens when your boat capsizes, and we looked at what you need to do below decks. We also asked people to let us know of any experiences they may have had during hurricane or typhoon weather or serious storms, and we got quite a few stories. Thank you, they're brilliant, and there's still more rolling in on YouTube, but also on our website. So just want to say a big thank you particularly to Marty Sparger, Jean Robillard, Kevin Costner, HH, Wombat and Max on Bert. All great stories, and we read them. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so if you're interested in their stories, then go to that episode and just check through the comments, because there's a lot of knowledge there. There's a lot of people that have got a lot of experience already, so always worth reading through their stories.
Right, so Larry, Mobile Tech, he wrote to us about the bolts, and one of the things that he was concerned about is that we were putting our bolts on the top of the lockers like this, and this is what Larry said. Your barrel bolts should be installed with the bolt in the downward position so gravity keeps them locked instead of facing upwards, in which case gravity can cause them to come open if hit with something that moves the bolt out of its supposedly locked position. It's a fair point, it is a very fair point, and in fact someone replied immediately on Patreon, Nige, said, you could argue if the yacht is inverted then the stainless steel latches are the correct way up or down, considering how or where you landed in or on your boat, and in fact that's exactly what I thought, Nige. It doesn't really matter where you put them, at one stage or another the likelihood is that they're going to bounce out, you know, bunking, blah, blah, blah. Seas that are doing that, boat doing that. There's always going to be a point at which they could potentially come out, so we are putting another bolt on each door. Overkill. Then a little while later we got another brilliant comment on YouTube from Matthew Austin, and he says, why not try and spring load the bolts? Some soft foam in the barrel at the back that you can press to open but won't let them drop out. Brilliant idea. And I think, Jamie, I think you're already thinking of that, aren't you? Yeah, so the idea is it kind of wedges the bolts in, and so they're less likely to fall out when it's bucking. Lots and lots of different bits of advice on securing below decks, and this one comes from Norman Smith. If you screw boards down and need to get access fast in a leak or a collision, what happens? And in fact, yeah, we were talking about that yesterday. We do need to secure the sole boards, but you really don't want to be screwing them down, because just as he says, if you get a collision or a hole or something, you need to get inside there, you've got screwed down floor, floorboards, not a good idea. And then also talking about securing below decks, KW Barnes 1 gave us 2 comments which I think are really good. Firstly, fire extinguishers. We had 3 sail across the cabin. 1, the locking strap came unlatched, and the other 2, the entire amount came off the bulkhead. Don't attach fire extinguishers to the bulkhead with screws. Use through bolts and large washers and or backing plates to make sure they stay where you put them when things go bad. If the locking strap allows it, you may want to add a remove before flight pin to the strap lock to make sure it doesn't open accidentally. At the moment we've got those ones that just sort of fit in, but potentially they could fall straight out. So KW Barnes 1 also asks us about the galley, and he says, do you keep your knives on the counter in a knife block? Find a way to secure the knives inside the block, blah blah blah. Yes, we do. It's one of the first things we did when we bought the boat, is we bought one of those wraps where you put the knives in and you curl it up and then it goes inside a drawer which is lockable. So right from the beginning we've made sure our knives don't fly around. If you saw the episode, you'll know that there was a big problem with bilges getting bunged up with mushed up paperback book paper. So Gary Gonzo got in touch to say, on your advice from over a year ago, we procured the sailing books that you recommended. Well done, thank you. Only put them on our Kindle. Very clever. And as a backup, we purchased a second Kindle and put those books on it also. Then the backup was put in the survival grab bag just in case. That's a really good idea. 2 Kindles. We have 2, 1 in the grab bag. Gonna do it. Thank you, Gary. And a few other comments on that mushing up pulpy problem that the bilge pumps can get and which stops them working. Alan Underdock. Make a bag for the bilge pumps out of screen, and I bet it would help keep things from plugging up your bilge pumps. And Nick Conqueror 4x4, have a backup pump with a macerator.
Right, on to a very important point which I hadn't thought about before but I think is really worth bearing in mind. Over on Patreon, SV Impavadius, which is Ant and Sid sailing. Hi guys. Biggest pump on a boat is the engine raw water pump. Think about a 3-way valve and strum box to the bilge. So you can use this pump too in an emergency. And sailing her Talmir has an engine driven pump that uses the raw water pump as a backup. Used only for extreme cases of continuous flooding, you can motor and dewater at the same time. And Tambury Jordan also says you could, as an emergency backup, rig the engine water pump to pump out huge amounts of water, but it depends on whether you have an open or closed cooling system. And also Piper McDermott, my son and his girlfriend were delivering a new mono from San Martin to Grenada. When they suffered a knockdown, the electric pump failed when the electrics were swamped. The engine became waterlogged due to waves slamming broadside on and flooding up the engine exhaust. There was no shut-off valve on the exhaust, a common cause of engine failure. So lots of things to think about there. I really do like the first 3 comments there about putting in a 3-way valve. I think that's definitely something we're going to look at. And some kind of way of putting in a 1-way valve system so that if you do get water at the back there, it's cut off.
We're on a Deben lugger from Suffolk out in the mangroves in Thailand. It's all a bit strange, but it's absolutely gorgeous. It's lovely out here, look. Plenty of wind. Had to go on the tiller, not very good.
You're going to have to do a tack in a minute, guys.
But we're going to have to tack, because if we don't, we're going to hit the fish farm. So bye.
Okay, ready to
Yeah,
tack?
ready to tack.
Okay, tack it.
Okay, more on dealing with flooding. Here's a comment from Brian Levac, who says that offshore races require a few things. The first is a manual pump mounted in the cockpit with the handle detachable and tied in a close location. Now we have one of those, Brian. A second point is a companionway hatch that is able to keep the water out and is attached to the boat. Now, our companionway hatch is connected, but of course the washboard isn't. So that's the first point. We need to find a way of stowing the washboard somewhere secure when we're not using it. But I think more importantly, what we're trying to think about is ways of locking that companionway closed when we're in bad weather, but in such a way that it can be unlocked from both inside and outside. So for example, if someone goes down to sleep during the night, we get knocked down, that person down below falls unconscious, the person on deck has to be able to get in. Vice versa, if something happens to someone on deck, the person down below has to be able to get out. So the question is, how do you keep all that locked up so it doesn't open in bad weather? And how do you keep it closed so that whoever is inside or outside the boat can gain access to it? If you've got any ideas, we'd love to know, because we still haven't quite come up with a solution for that yet. The third point he makes is a positive locks on doors and hatches. So I think we're about 90% there with those. We still have a couple of doors in the bulkheads that I think we'd like to make more secure.
Another point that was raised by SV Tattoo about how to secure everything down below, and he says, or she says, you've got to look after your seacocks, because even above the waterline they should be closed. I didn't have my seacock closed during a knockdown, and water came out of the sink drain like a fire hose. Good point. Do you and should you shut them all of the time and only open them if you need them? I guess that's probably the right thing to do. So just moving on to the deck now, and how you should secure everything on deck and what you should and shouldn't have on board. Got a comment from HH. Life raft. In my waters, the North Sea, it's very popular to have the raft mounted on the push bit. If you should take a barrel roll, the raft and the push bit could be gone. The safest place is under the main boom, bolted to the roof. Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. We are discussing right now where to put our brand new life raft, which we're just about to order. We had considered putting it on the push bit, but we know really deep down inside that we shouldn't do that. So we have got to rethink, and there's not many places on Esprit. If anyone's got any other ideas about where we can put it, other than on top of the cabin underneath the mizzen boom, which is the only spare space I can see, do let us know, thanks. HH also gives us a little insight into some of his other experiences in the North Sea, and he has had a lot of storm weather experience. During one of my rougher trips, I had breaking waves coming in 4 meters above deck level. If I'd had a spray hood, it would have been gone. The trick is to have nothing that the sea can hang on to. There are tons of water bashing down. You can't say enough about the amount of strain that everything on deck takes. So yes, I mean, we actually benched stanchions when we came across the Indian Ocean, so yeah, very mindful of that. We had quite a number of suggestions and comments on tactics for sailing in stormy weather. This is something we're going to discuss in a lot more detail later on when we start to look at drogues and sea anchors and so forth. But this is worth reading out. I discovered this when I was doing some research. Series drogue, para anchor, heaving to, lying a hull or running off are options for survival in storm conditions. Which is best? Only you can evaluate your boat's handling peculiarities and use this knowledge to choose the right storm tactics suited to your yacht. That comes from the Series Drogue website, and I think that's pretty much what most of us were saying. It depends so much on the situation and your boat and your skills. So as I say, we'll talk about that a little bit more, but I just wanted to point this out from David Malone on Patreon. We have already suggested that you should read Heavy Weather Sailing by Peter Bruce, but they're suggesting that you should also read the Lynn and Larry Pardey book, which is called Storm Tactics. So get Storm Tactics by Lynn and Larry Pardey. I've just done that.
Cigar Man makes a very good comment about chain plates, making sure that they're up to the task. If you imagine the amount of strain that is put on your chain plates, and he's talking specifically about the cleats and your fair leads that are going to be managing your bridle system if you're running a drogue. And the amount of strain on those is incredible. So he's suggesting that you put backing plates on those, and Cigar Man, that's a very good point. That's been on our list for a while now, and it's something that we fully intend to do, is to put some, who knows, maybe 5, possibly even 10mm stainless backing plates on all of those deck fittings. The other consideration thinking about bridles is chafing as well. Chafing can happen very quickly if the bridle is not set up correctly. If you've got any ideas, we'd love to hear from you. And please, if any of you have got any more stories about how you've coped in heavy weather, the tactics that you used, please do pop them in the comments. Just a few other notes to pick up on from your comments from our last video. SV Tattoo says it's a very good idea to wear a helmet when the weather gets rough. My helmet has a built-in headlamp that's my only light source in the event of electrical failure during a knockdown. I think this is a great idea. Someone else also came up with the idea of ski goggles. I've heard a few people mention ski goggles. When you've got rain that feels like little pellets hitting you very hard, it's very difficult to see, and we've been in those situations. So helmet and ski goggles sounds ridiculous, but two very good ideas. And finally, had a very interesting chat with Nick Bernstein. I haven't sailed in any real heavy weather, but even in normal conditions, an extended crossing like that could be pretty wearing on 2 people. Are you planning on any kind of pre-crossing fitness regime in order to help with a potential extended time at the helm under rough conditions? Nick and I had a backwards and forwards conversation about this. I was explaining how currently at the moment Liz and I are not in our peak physical fitness, and Nick quickly replied saying, please don't think I was being personal, to which I said, well, we understand, of course you weren't being personal, but it is a concern of ours. At the moment, whilst we're in the yard, we're not doing enough exercise. When we did our last big crossing from the Maldives over to Malaysia through the the southwest monsoon, Liz and I were very fit. We'd been running and swimming a lot in India. We'd been doing quite a bit of sailing down to the Maldives. We were in very good condition, but even that crossing, if you remember, we had no steering, we had no autopilot, sorry. We were having to hand steer, and it broke us, and we were very, very fit then. So it's something we're very aware of. I think as we start making our way towards the Philippines and Japan, we're going to be doing more sailing and trying to keep ourselves in shape. But right now, I'm quite thirsty for a beer. So I think I'll hold off on the exercise until tomorrow, Nick. A couple of weeks ago we had the big boats out, and today it's time for the little boats. So we've got John on the helm. Liz is playing around with the mizzen at the moment, got a bit caught, but of course she's an expert at the mizzen because she knows all about those because we have one. Anyway, beautiful day. We're about to hit the mangroves, so we're going to do a quick tack.
Thank you for all your great comments, suggestions, advice, tips and stories. Put more in this video. We love reading them. They are really, really helpful. We really appreciate it. In the meantime, peace and fair winds.